Now, I'm delighted to have on the line with me Ger Deering, who is the Ombudsman from the Office of the Ombudsman. And got a press release this week which says that the Ombudsman has received the highest number of public service complaints in over 30 years. So we're becoming more complaining, or there's more things to complain about. We don't really know which. But first of all, Ger, you're very, very welcome to Connemara Community Radio.
Thanks very much, Marion. Delighted to have the opportunity to be with you.
Right. So which do you think it is? Are we complaining more often, or are there more things to complain about?
I think there's a number of things, but I think you're right about the more things to complain about. If you think about it now, we have a bigger population and we have much more public services than we used to have. But I also think people are more aware through programmes such as your own about the Office of the Ombudsman. And I think, too, we're getting a little bit better at complaining. I think Irish people traditionally didn't like to complain, but I think we're realising that, a complaint is not a negative thing. It's actually feedback, and it's an opportunity to help people to improve the services that we provide.
I think that's a very important point you made there, actually, because, we could be moaning and complaining about this, that and the other, but only if we do that formally can possibly something be done about it.
That's absolutely true, and we have very many examples, Marion, of where through a complaint that somebody has made to us, we've identified maybe a systemic issue in a particular service. It could be a hospital, it could be something, and very often the people that complain, there isn't much maybe that can be done for them, but they don't want it to happen to somebody else. They don't want somebody else to suffer the same experience, and they want the service to improve. So, as you say, it really is important that people would provide this feedback in the first instance to the public body, and if they don't get satisfaction there, that they should come to us.
Well, of course, we're here in Connemara and that's in Galway, and there were 217 complaints made from people living in Galway in 2025, and most of those seem to be about either Galway County Council, Galway City Council, some about the University Hospital, and some about the university itself. But it's surprising. Obviously, the vast majority of those were from either the County Council or the City Council. What sort of complaints do people have about the council or their services?
Again, I suppose, given the number of interactions that people have with their local authority, it's not surprising that there are a number of complaints, and we're finding across the country that the vast majority of complaints in relation to local authorities are about housing. Now, obviously, we have a housing crisis, so we're not able to, find accommodation for people. But what we do, particularly in the area of housing and that, is to make sure that people are treated with dignity and respect when they interact with a council. In fact, we have a human rights-based approach to dealing with our complaints. So we don't just see, did the person get what they were entitled to, or, whatever. We actually look to see how was that person treated in their interactions with the public body. And one of the things we've noticed in housing in particular is local authorities have a duty each year to update the housing application list. And so they write to, as far as I understand, everybody on the housing list, and people have to respond in order to, secure or keep their place on the housing list. But we've come across on a number of occasions where the local authority writes to the housing applicant, gets no response, and then just takes them off the housing list. Now, we think that's not sufficient. By their nature, some of the people on the housing list are homeless. Some of them may not have the best literacy skills. So we would say to the local authorities that they should give more than one chance to those people. They should use telephones, texts, email, and a variety of ways to try and communicate to ensure. And then, if it is found that the person should genuinely have remained on the housing list, the next problem we encounter sometimes is they're put back on the list from today's date, where they may well have been, 6, 8, indeed 12 years on the housing list before they were removed. So we look to see that they actually get restored on the housing list with the same time period.
Well, I'm amazed to hear that, really, because not only might they have moved, or as you say, they might not be very literate, or whatever it is, the postal service isn't 100% infallible.
Yes. Yeah,
a letter might just not happen to arrive.
Indeed.
So it's no, that does sound very, very harsh, doesn't it? On the behalf, I don't blame people complaining about that one at all. And then hospital complaints is, I mean, one of the big complaints that the HSE, of course, have is that there isn't enough provision made for people to leave hospital, so they're short of beds and so on. Does that come into the complaints, or is it different things?
It does come into the complaints sometimes, and indeed the fact that people are sometimes released to, say, a nursing home. We also deal with complaints, by the way. We deal with all public bodies, including the hospitals, and we deal with complaints against nursing homes. And I remember one particular case where a gentleman was released into a nursing home, meant to be for a temporary period, but it went for longer than anybody anticipated. But nobody actually mentioned to him or his family that he was being put into a private nursing home and that a bill would ensue. And after a period of time, the family received a bill for €32,000 that they were not expecting. Now, thankfully, in that case, we did engage with the nursing home, and they agreed that because nobody had actually informed them up front that this would be a charge, they wrote off that. Another issue we come across in relation to, and we've done a lot of work in this area, is where people, maybe somebody with a disability, has found themselves in hospital, is then released, again, meant to be on a temporary basis, into a nursing home. Now, I'm talking about people under the age of 65. They can be as young as 20, 30, 40, in their 50s, and nursing homes are not suitable. It's not that there's a problem with nursing homes, it's that they are designed for people with different issues, with at a different stage in their life. And my predecessor actually did a report into this. And we also do, Marion, what we call systemic, our own initiative investigation. So we don't just wait for complaints if we determine that there's a problem. And we did determine there was a problem here. And it transpired that there were over 1,000 people in this situation. And to their credit, the HSE took on the recommendations of our report at the time and started a programme for under 65s in nursing home. And they transitioned about 100 people out. And they also made better facilities for people staying in nursing homes in that category. That ran into a bit of trouble in 2025, or 2024 actually, when we heard that the budget was being cut for finding people better, more suitable accommodation for 2025. We put pressure on the government, on the powers to be, and I'm glad to say that actually the funding was restored for 2026 and that programme is up and running. So again, coming back to where we started out, you can see the importance of people pointing these things out to us and us doing our investigation. And one of the things our office is very good at is actually persisting. We've been dealing with things like transport for people with disabilities and the under 65s that I mentioned and those things for very many years. But we don't give up. We keep persisting. And in fact, that's an area where there is some progress now being made due to successive interventions from various predecessors of mine and myself over recent years.
I'm just thinking if somebody, one of the listeners who's listening now, has a bit of a problem with some public body or other, should they go to that body themselves first and bring their complaint to them first before going to the Ombudsman, or should they come straight to you?
No, it's important that they go back to the public body and give the body an opportunity. And to be fair, many of the bodies have good complaints procedures. And in fact, we talked earlier about local authorities. We did a lot of work with local authorities last year to help them to implement better complaints processes so that we're not getting so many complaints about them. So the clear answer to that question is you must go back to the public body, complain to them, give them an opportunity, and then if you're unhappy, if you can't get a response indeed, or you're unhappy with the response that you get, then they can come to us with a complaint.
Okay, that makes sense that way around, all right. Because I suppose you should always give the body a chance. I think though, well, I would say in general that's not right, but some people do find it very, very difficult to deal with public bodies, and we all know, I think, some employees of public bodies are perhaps not very good at dealing with the public.
That can happen indeed. And I suppose firstly to acknowledge that the vast majority of public bodies do actually engage well with the public and do provide a good service. There are millions of transactions literally every week happening in the country that work well. But certainly there are instances where, and that's what I said also about us taking a human rights-based approach. So we're not just going to look and see how, what the person got in terms of service or didn't get. We will also look at how they were treated, were they treated properly in their encounter with a public body.
Well, yeah, I think that's a very important point, because I do know, even myself, that sometimes you can find the employees or the people you're dealing with, maybe, I don't know, a little bit patronising. If that's
and
the
that
right
shouldn't
word.
that shouldn't happen.
I know
Certainly, no.
it shouldn't, but I think it does happen, to be honest,
Yeah.
at times anyway, which
Sure.
is unfortunate. But obviously, I mean, so the procedure is that if somebody does have a complaint, they go back to the body with whom they have the complaint. They see how that gets dealt with there, and then if they're not satisfied with the results, they then come to you.
That's right. And maybe on that point you've just made about people interacting with public bodies, we last year we put in place an online training program for people who work in public bodies in terms of providing better customer service and dealing with complaints. So we don't just, deal, as I say, with the individual complaints. We also look to try and improve public services generally and how people are dealt with by public servants.
Oh, I think I'm delighted to hear that. I think that's very good.
It's available on our website actually, and people can access it there.
Okay, so we just come into the end there, and your website is what? Just the Ombudsman, or
ombudsman.ie, www.ombudsman.ie.
Very simple.
And as we're coming to the end, Marion, can I just thank you very much for the opportunity of the show, but also draw attention to the fact that we are in Galway. The fourth Tuesday of each month we do a clinic. We're very happy to partner with the Citizens Information Centre there at Augustine House. And so the next clinics would be the 25th of August and the 22nd of September, because they're, as I say, they run monthly on the fourth Tuesday of each month. So just to make people aware of that, and you can meet us in person there.
Okay, and I presume that the information about that and the details are on the website as well.
Absolutely,
indeed. So that's the best thing to do, because people aren't going to remember those dates, I don't think.
Sure.
So go on to ombudsman.ie and you can get all that information. That's very useful, because people can actually go in and talk to person, which is.
And we always say to people, if they're in doubt as to whether we can help them or not, please contact us and we'll help to clarify what we can do. Okay,
thank you very much indeed. Ger Deering, the Ombudsman, thank you very, very much for coming on and telling us all that. And great service and great work your department does, there's no doubt.
Thanks very much, Marion.
Thank you.